I majored in chemistry and double minored in art history and studio art. So I was kind of all over the place, was considering a career in art conservation all the time. And a lot of the faculty on this call can recall my like never ending pursuit to like figure out what I want to be when I grow up. But thanks to their support in that journey. I currently am identifying as an educator and an artist, as though even though I feel like an imposter sometimes, I feel super validated by this group and just being here tonight. I'm currently the assistant director of student affairs at the School Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University. So I'm currently on track for perhaps a career in higher ed or arts administration, which has been super rewarding for me so far.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Jenny, did you want to share a little bit about you next?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated from Holy Cross in 2012, and I did studio art major with a pre-med concentration. And after graduating from Holy Cross, I moved home to Newfoundland and got 2 jobs, one selling running shoes and the other one at an art gallery framing and selling artwork. I eventually went to Toronto to do the prosthetic orthotic technician program. And then I thought I was interested in research, so I did a master's in rehab science. But then an opening for a prosthetic technician job opened up back home. So moved home, and yeah, I'm working as a prosthetic technical intern. So I'm still working under a supervisor, but for my job, I fabricate, repair, and maintain prosthetic limbs.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Demetrius, we'd love to hear from
Hello,
you.
everybody. Nice to see some familiar faces as well. My name is Demetrius Wilson. I graduated back in 2018, so relatively, very relative. I've kind of been all over the place. I'm a studio art major, art history minor. But yeah, life after Holy Cross, I thought I wanted to work into higher ed, so I started working with the AmeriCorps. I was citizen school, so I was teaching apprenticeships, but I was only there for a short stint. And then I'm at my current job where I am the teen service coordinator at a local boys and girls club, and I work closely with our teens, creating, constructing programs for them to do, kind of keeping them engaged and kind of reaching out to other teens in the area. Um, Also been doing a lot of other side gigs, working at Michael's, for the discounts, but don't tell them. And then also just working on art when I'm not working out in the daytime.
Great, thank you. So I would love to hear a little bit from each of the alums about kind of what drew you to Holy Cross, kind of what was some of the deciding factors that made you decide that Holy Cross was the right fit for you. Anyone can jump in.
I can go first since I went last.
Go ahead.
So Holy Cross was like my top 2. My top 1 was Providence College, but I leaned a little bit more towards Holy Cross after my experience of being on campus. Seems a little bit more intimate, and kind of allowed me to have a little bit more freedom, just because the campus was a little bit more smaller, and it was easier for me to kind of connect a bit, as well as it was kind of not too far from home, but it was a little bit close. So that also played a factor. And I really just enjoyed the idea of like a liberal arts kind of education where you can kind of explore and see what areas you're interested in. I actually became involved in studio art at the latter end of my sophomore year. So it took me some time to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. So Holy Cross definitely aided me in my choice.
Jenny or Sarah, what was some of your reasons for Holy Cross?
Yeah, so I guess Holy Cross was really appealing for me because of the liberal arts aspect. And I love making art, and I love learning about science. And Holy Cross was actually the only school that I applied to where I was able to do both at the same time. So that was what ended up being like the thing that really sold it for me.
Sounds like we all have a little bit in common in that regard. So in high school, I was really involved in like art, and I was like in an APR. It was like a whole community. It was really cool, and I wanted to make sure that I continued studying art in college, but I was also considering career in medicine. So I wanted a strong liberal arts program with a strong science program, and that's what initially drew me to Holy Cross, and like I ended up learning so much more about what a liberal arts education could be while I was there. So yeah, I feel really grateful that I ended up landing where I did. I didn't know like how great it was going to be.
Great. So this is a alumni visual arts. You guys majored in visual arts. So it would be great to hear a little bit about the skills that you developed in your courses at Holy Cross, and how they apply to the work or the way, like your life today. So what are some skills that you were able to sort of identify that you developed when you're at Holy Cross, and what do you value in those as you're working and living today?
I can jump in. So when thinking about this, I really feel like in my visual arts courses, I got the opportunity to practice like listening and asking questions. And I really love how that comes through in the work that I do every day in my job, but also as a human. Like this was a skill I got to practice in crits, and also just I use my sketchbook as like kind of a note-taking mental dump place, and those have just been really worthwhile skills for myself. Like being able just to really take a step back. The idea of like looking at something critically and slowly is really important. And while listening to like those around you, and to be able to like ask questions that are both probing but also expanding conversations have always been really, really important to me.
And can I just continue, like a follow up to that question?
Sure.
Al? So when you, like, how do you track those things that you learned? Like, did you know you were developing those skills when you were, when you were a studio art major, or is it something that you look back on? So I was thinking about students and advice for like how to recognize the skills that you're learning now, and
Yeah.
sort of keep at them and understand how to develop with them.
No, that's a really great question. So I feel like in a lot of ways, my education at Holy Cross was like, I felt spoofed. Like, I feel like I was like, wow, you taught me that doing those things. And I didn't know that was the point until like the end. And I noticed like, especially in, what was it, the end of course things, there's like that question where it's like, did your capacity to think expand? And you were like, oh wait, yeah, like actually kind of did, and I didn't think about the way that it did. So I guess those end of course reflections were really important for me in thinking about how I grew personally in those like particular skills, those transferable skills that I was working on. And then and just kind of tracking how they, I guess, develop throughout. I feel like I answered the question, right? I mean, I'll let somebody else add to it. Yeah.
You did. I love the idea that the end of course evaluation would be, something that you would be paying attention to for yourself. That says a lot about you, actually, which is, really wonderful. Jenny or Demetrius, do you want to talk a little bit about skills, soft or hard, that you felt like you gained from your studio courses?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I guess taking visual arts courses really helped me develop my problem solving skills, because I feel like when you're creating something, you're faced with this problem of how do I get this idea in my head and make it happen physically. And similarly, when I'm at my job, I have to get the criteria that's given to me from the clinician and figure out, how do I make this limb happen? How do I build it? So I guess like in terms of how I developed that and tracked that at Holy Cross, I guess I really worked on developing like my technical skills, or like about the medium that I was, or the materials that I was working with. Because I feel like the more you know and the more skills you have working with a material, the easier it is to work creatively and problem solve. And then I guess the way I kind of tracked that would be to like through engaging with others. So when you get feedback from professors or supervisors or even your peers, you get a better idea of what works and what doesn't, and how you can approach future projects.
I love the idea that the essential question you have to ask is how do I make this limb happen? Demetrius, do you want to talk a little bit about skills? We'd love to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of skills during my tenure in studio art. I probably learned the most skills probably my junior year, where I took like 4 studio art classes like in an entire semester, which was pretty intense. It wasn't recommended, but I did it anyway. But a couple of skills I learned were definitely like what Sarah was talking about, as the criticism aspect, like doing like public speaking, having to kind of defend and explain your art in a large lens to make sure it addresses not only your topics but also things outside of it, and how can you connect it to your own message. Um, Definitely allowing me to think a little bit more critically of the things I try to put out into the world, rather than from I guess a simple manner, but how can you kind of expand it in a way. So I was definitely challenged a lot in that aspect. So I definitely think I'm a little bit better thinking critically, um, in that regard. Also, really, I don't know if this is like really a skill, but like kind of like tunnel vision skill, because I was like in the studio like nonstop, even on the weekends. It's just kind of getting that drive, just making sure that I'm constantly trying to make efforts and improving, and just being kind of atoned into what I'm doing, and also just my versatility, which definitely plays a part in my role as a team service coordinator. I'm working with a whole bunch of kids and teens. They don't, even though they're pretty much going through, similar circumstances, they're all having their own different battles, from like a 14-year-old compared to like a 17-year-old. So you have to be able to kind of find ways to adapt and make sure you're attending to their needs and their wants. It's like a never-ending battle, but somehow I, managed to do it in the end. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's some super skills involved with wrangling teenagers, but also doing that kind of valuable work with them. So I'm going to ask a similar question, and it might be that a lot of those skills also pertain to the idea of how you leverage your liberal arts experience, your liberal arts degree in the work that you're doing right now. I see you nodding, Val.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just go back to the idea of just the like critical thinking skills, being able to code switch or learn like different things, because every problem that you're going to face, you're going to have to do some research. And I feel like my liberal arts degree prepared me to kind of be open to that process, but also be really excited and curious too. And I think that also, I guess, speak to me as an individual. So what I learned in my like liberal arts experience, it also allows me to relate to a lot of different people and their different interests. It's particularly important in my role because I'm often working with students with a bunch of different backgrounds, and whether those are academic pursuits or personal backgrounds. Like Demetrius, I did some work with youth. I was an AmeriCorps Nativity Fellow when I first graduated Holy Cross. And so just thinking about being able to relate to others, but also put in the time to research different issues and different problems to be able to come up with that solution as a team. Yeah.
I think for me, it really just kind of made learning fun again. Because typically, like when I think of academia, it's kind of like it's just rigorous work, and you're like just doing things just to kind of learn it, just to kind of memorize it, and it doesn't really seem fun at points. But with a liberal arts education, you're kind of have a little bit more freedom compared to like other institutions. You're able to kind of choose the things you want to learn, and that in itself kind of makes it a bit more fun. Um, Definitely a lot more enjoyable, definitely for me.
Yeah, I guess, oh, sorry, for me, I guess the cool thing about liberal arts is you get to learn about the world from so many different angles and just different ways to problem solve. So I guess like at my job, when I build a leg, I have to understand the biomechanics and I have to understand the anatomy, but I also have to make it look nice and have the technical skills to do it. So I guess Holy Cross really prepared me well for this, like this multifaceted problem solving that my job requires every day.
Great. And it's amazing as you think about all the different things that you're all doing and the different ways that you're all kind of leveraging those skills and experiences that you gained as liberal arts students, which is awesome. That's the point, right? So what I would like to talk about next is, as you think about, as the three of you think about kind of your career path to date, what were some planned and or maybe unplanned events that really kind of connected you to the work that you're doing now, and or maybe kind of that first job coming out of Holy Cross? Like, what did that look like for you?
So we're talking about like some planned and unplanned things that we did after, like how and can you kind of like reiterate the question?
Yeah. So like, as you think about kind of where you are today, right, and kind of how you got there after graduating from Holy Cross, like what led to that, I guess would be kind of what I'm talking about. Beatrice, was because the career path often is not like a linear path where you're like checking a box and you're moving along. It's often like a windy road, and there's different things that might kind of present itself and lead you in a certain direction. So I would just love to hear about, as you think about that kind of career path for each of you to date, and what were the contributing factors? Were there some events or unplanned things or planned things that you really were purposeful about, or were there things that kind of presented themselves that like took you in a direction that you didn't expect?
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can jump in.
Yeah.
So when I think of like that windy path, and there's been a lot of different opportunities that I've been really grateful to experience until like where I am today. I'm gonna pick out the ones that are all higher ed related, and I just want to frame that, and that knowing that like there was a lot of other things that happened around those things. So I'd say the first time I was exposed to like higher education as like a career and a profession was at Holy Cross. I actually have this very specific memory sitting with a supervisor. I was an RA throughout my time. So RA, I was in Wheeler, then Loyola, then Figge, for any of our folks who are RAs or living in any of those dorms right now. And I remember sitting with my supervisor as like my RA supervisor, and he asked me about like what careers I was interested in. And at that time I was like all about chemistry. I was like, I think I want to be a chemistry professor. But I told him, oh, I think I'd like to pursue a career in higher education. And like I didn't realize that actually higher education is this whole field, like the student affairs practitioners is a whole thing, and like that's where I first learned about it. He's like, oh, you mean this or this? And then that was like, I remember that clear moment being like, oh wow, like that's where I learned about that. I think additional like information just as to why I didn't know is I'm a first generation student in that my dad didn't go to college and my mom commuted, so this like idea of like a residential learning experience was really new to me, and so thankfully that ended up the higher ed residential life role ended up helping me out later down the line when I went back for my post-bac certificate in fine art at Brandeis, when I was just really focusing on building out my portfolio. I was considering getting an MFA at that point, and I ended up getting a job as a graduate resident director. So I was back in higher ed again, and it happened to be a resident director job at the SMFA at Tufts, which then ended up introducing me to my current role. So not planned. I was like, didn't know that being an RA would be such an important experience for me. And it ended up also, what was really like, I just feel really lucky about is that I ended up being an RA I ended up being in residential life in higher ed at an art school. So it's like I was continuing to always pursue my interests and what really felt right to me at the time, and along the way, landing myself in positions to like further my career. So there's a really nice art community that I'm part of, but also at the same time, I'm leveraging my administrative skills too.
Awesome. And Sarah, a follow-up question to that, like how did you kind of, as you navigated that and that path kind of opened some of those doors that you hadn't anticipated, how did you really determine that that was the right fit for you? Like what were some of the factors or things that kind of solidified for you? Like, okay, this is the path I should be on.
Yeah, I mean, I just kept feeling like, oh, I really like doing this work, and the jobs would stick out to me and they keep showing up in the same way that I was like, I was really pushing myself away from my like arts interest for a while at Holy Cross. My parents didn't want me to study art. They didn't want me. It was like a huge part of myself and like my identity, but and I always kept going back to it because I wanted to take the classes, and and then I end up with a major or a minor or whatever, and and you just like you start thinking about that tunnel vision thing that you said, Demetrius. Like you start just honing in, or for me, I started honing in on just opportunities and things that sounded like they would be like a good fit for me. So I liked working with people. I'm a pretty organized person, and so just like being able to organize people, but also build community. Those are like really important things to me, and they're also important things to me in my own creative practice, like community building and social engagement. Um, so it's like I kept kind of chasing these ideas and these communities that like I felt really comfortable being in, and I like felt that I was also just like building an idea that I quite like wasn't really sure what it was going towards yet, but I'm like really excited about it. Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. And it's amazing how it's like there's aspects of you that you know are important to you. And then eventually they connect where you're like, oh, I really like what I'm doing. And this connects to really what's important to me. So it all makes sense.
I can get paid. Like what?
Right.
Like
Fabulous. Who knew? Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Val. Jenny, Demetrius, what about you? Either perspectives from either the two of you as you think about kind of what
Yeah, so I very much just kind of stumbled upon my current industry. I just learned about another art major who was working as a prosthetic technician, and then after talking to her, I thought the field sounded really cool. So then after that, I volunteered at a clinic for a year, and then decided to apply and was accepted into the prosthetic orthotic technician program in Toronto. And yeah, I love what I do. Like it fits well. Because I love the everyday work that my job entails. So like I get to work with my hands and build things and make things look pretty. But I also really like my job on a philosophical level as well. Like I find what I do to be very meaningful. Like I get to help people walk or participate in activities or help them feel more comfortable with their appearance. So like I just love what I do.
Great. And I think that's part, I know I found as a Holy Cross alum too, Holy Cross instills that in you, right? Like that like searching for feeling like you're making an impact and there's meaning in the work that you're doing. So I think that's fabulous that you're able to find that in your work currently. It's great. Good. Okay, so let's keep moving. So I would love to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about mentors. So I'd love to hear, from any of the three of you, like, have you had mentors that have kind of helped you in your career, and kind of what role have they played for you?
I can lead that off. So, one important thing that I would recommend as early advice is to kind of keep in contact with those who helped you along the way. So I still stay in contact with a lot of my professors from Holy Cross, like Professor Ranklin, build on, submit, stay in contact with a lot of them, reach out to them for like advice. These past 2 years, although I'm like working full-time jobs, I kind of like live a double life. So when I'm not working daytime, so I like to probably dedicate about 3 hours a day to kind of like just painting in the studio. And with that finally paid off, I had a solo exhibition earlier this year in February, right before like the prime of quarantine and the COVID. And that really was just a lot of guidance, reaching out for opportunities and kind of really just trying to see uh, the ways I should approach certain things, and it all paid off. Still kind of relying on them in certain aspects, but I'm definitely gaining a little bit more independence in my artistic practice. Um, and that just goes with like a lot of success and failure. In the beginning of my art, like in the beginning after Holy Cross, I definitely endured a lot more failure than success. But as I began to kind of stick it out and keep my mentors around, I'm definitely starting to see a little bit more positive benefits of what I do from day to day.
Great. And Demetrius, I would imagine, as you said, kind of living that double life of like what you're doing during the day and then devoting like those 3 hours a day to painting and being in studio. So have your mentors kind of helped to like push you a little bit and kind of keep that motivation going? Like talk to me a little bit about that. I think that'd be hard.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, you gotta work a full-time job for about 8 hours, probably even more. Then you have to have the will to even want to create, and that can be tough at times. So by even doing just the littlest things, I feel a little bit productive. But definitely in the beginning, it was a lot harder. Just because like fresh out of college, you don't really have like that access to your professors like at will. You kind of have to start doing things on your own. Um, Definitely reach out to them. And that's what I definitely did. But like I said, as I began to come along, I definitely been taking strides by myself. And plus, that kind of led me up until like my current decision, like trying to go back for my MFA. Well, not trying, but applying for my MFA right now. So shout out to my mentors. You know who you are.
That's impressive. You're a busy guy.
I try to.
So Val or Jenny, thoughts on like mentors from your perspective and how you've used them, kind of identified them?
Yeah, so right now, like my supervisor at work is probably my main mentor. She's really taken me under her wing at work. So when we first started working together, we had a conversation about how I best learn and my goals, and she sort of helped me work towards those goals, and we check in pretty often. And she also makes sure that I get a variety of different types of projects so that I can expand my skills. And she also lets me get experience doing things, even if it means that sometimes the project gets finished a little bit slower because I'm still learning. But she's been really great, and sort of she takes the role very seriously, which has been awesome.
That's great. Supervisors make and break a role, right? So that's fantastic. So yeah, Val, go ahead.
Sure, I do. I wasn't sure. Go ahead. All right. So I graduated in 2016, so it wasn't not that long ago. I'm supposed to have my 5-year reunion this year, but everything. And I still feel like the that supported me throughout my experience across in department in chemistry. You all have my back, and it's really, really helpful, and really it feels really good. I mean, Holy Cross shows up for you in a lot of different ways in your life. So I know I benefit from living in the Boston area, and it's been pretty easy to stay connected with my lovely mentors in this space. Chrissy's always ready to take a call for me, which I appreciate. And a lot of other folks were Susan. I don't know if you remember Professor Schmidt, but you were like the first professor I ever talked to at Holy Cross. You called me and were like, "Congratulations, you made it into Holy Cross." And there's just like so many of you played such an important role in that piece. And yeah, mentors, it's when you find your mentors, they're usually your people that you feel really comfortable with, and you feel like you can ask questions without boundaries, and they're there for you to grow. And I found mentors not only in like staff that I was working with in my RA role, but also like upperclassmen were really important mentors to me, and like helping navigate my experience at Holy Cross, but also my academic experience. So yeah, mentors are super important, and it's also super important for you to become a mentor too. Yeah.
And Sarah, like a follow-up question to that, I would love to hear about, beyond kind of just the mentors, like networking and just kind of building a network of people is kind of so important, I think, in calling all aspects of industries and life at Holy Cross. So how have you done that? How have you kind of built and maintained a network of kind of people you can rely
on? I'd say half of it is showing up. There's so many ways to support your mentors and your network there, especially in the art world. There's always like a show or a talk or just some kind of project that you can be part of. And like Demetrius was saying, there's like, it can be really hard, like after you're working a long day, and like super hard some days, but it really makes a difference, like showing up for your network. Would this be the time to drop a potential opportunity to show up for your network? Okay. So yes, thank you. So please everybody follow the @HC Arts AF, the Holy Cross Arts Affinity Group. So we're working on like building out that community of artists and folks that are considering careers in the creative fields. I have the wonderful pleasure of moderating a talk on Friday, actually, as part of the Pro Arts Consortium, which is a consortium of art schools in Boston. And we're doing a bunch of talks on social engagement and creative practices. So I know lately for me, it's been actually really hard to make in the context of the pandemic, but I think there's always like a way for you to be part of the community, or you might have to step away from the easel for a little bit. But I look forward to getting back into that. But I think this is a really great way, for example, to just stay connected, get involved. I know we're always looking for people to be part of things like the affinity group. Yeah, so those are just a few ways. So follow things on social media, show up. And it's one more Zoom call, but it makes an impression. It makes a difference.
All right, I'm going to ask a question that's a little like, sort of thinking about Demetrius making art, between the hours of 8 p.m. and midnight or whenever you're making it. Just a question for you guys as creative people. What were some of the difficulty? What was the hardest thing about your practice coming sort of out of college and into the world of being an adult? And how do you keep making? What are some of the strategies that you've used that keep you using, like, exercising that creative muscle?
Right. I mean, visual arts, like Holy Cross, like you definitely get like a lot of academia, and that's what kind of like guides your, I guess, your artist direction. But once you leave college, you no longer really have a consistent flow of like academic instruction. So you kind of have to begin to do it on your own. You start doing it at the end um, of your journey, but that kind of leads to like what it's going to look like after you graduate. For me, that was definitely the toughest because I was just so used to just creating art based off like guidance. But I mean, the first year was definitely a lot harder. But now that I'm kind of like in year 2 out of college, I definitely feel like I'm starting to hit my stride. And one way for me to kind of keep that going is like usually when I hit a roadblock, I do a lot of drawing. So I've been like just filling out like sketchbooks. I try to do like one a month, one sketchbook a month. I actually have one right here. I'm actually almost done. Just do a couple of drawings, and that kind of allows me to really just draw what comes to my head naturally, but also really try to have a dialogue with other topics that I might not be that I might not be aware of or like so known fond of. Um, that way, I'm still challenging myself while still being creative. I'm really just trying to keep art around, try to do it as much as I can. And even as far as just like sketching daily, that kind of promotes you doing something. That's what I strive to do, and that typically has fueled my artist practice in the later years after college.
For me, oh, Jenny, do you want?
No. Or I was going to say Jenny or Val.
Sure. So for me, like very practical things immediately out of college that come to mind was like having space and like thankfully I had some housemates that let me like occupy a table in a corner and like making sure I wasn't using like materials that I shouldn't be using near kitchens or something, so like immediately like trying to always like right now, right, 5 years later, I finally have gotten to a place where I can actually have like I'm lucky right now I'm in my studio office space, and like that took a lot of hard work to get to this position. So like behind this wall is like all my art stuff, and it's like a huge shelf, right? And so like maintaining making sure I have the space and like some kind of balance to it. Something that's also helped me stay fueled and connected to my creative work is like reading. So like that's something I don't think I did enough of in school, was just like reading about art and things that were going on. And that can also be really helpful right out of college. Is like, you don't necessarily always have to be making, although it is really great. I love that sketchbook practice that you have going, Demetrius. And definitely just going to things like modeling sessions at local museums and just trying to stay in touch with like what kind of openings there are in communities you can get involved in.
Jenny.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of keep a sketchbook, and I guess like I just sort of do art when I can find the time after work, and I like some of it is like I like making artist books still, but I made them in Holy Cross, but I have this weird hobby where I make them, but I don't always fill them up. So I just make artist books out of things in my house and sort of do things like that. Or sometimes I do a little bit of printmaking. So like I guess I've just been sort of having fun with it, and occasionally, yeah, sometimes I'll go to things around like the city and stuff. Well, pre-COVID and stuff, not much going on now, but yeah, I just kind of have fun with it and do my thing.
Great. I think you guys can see your professors like lighting up at the idea of you guys making art. And I saw Susan Schmidt go, books. And I also love the tantalizing backdrops where everyone has art hidden behind walls behind them that we cannot see. This is the beauty of a Zoom call, I guess. So a more practical question about how you package yourself. You know, you all have taken sort of different career trajectories. You know, how do you leverage the skills? How do you package yourself on a CV or a resume so that you can actually get those jobs that you're interested in? Do you have any good advice for students on how to do stuff like that?
I like to look at the CVs and resumes of like folks that I admire. Whether that's other artists or just other professionals I'm aware of on LinkedIn, and just seeing like what kinds of experiences that they had to have the current position or the position I would like that they have that I really aspired to have in the future. I look at job descriptions and try to make my resume look just like the job description. No. Listen to Julie, she knows better about how to actually do that. But yeah, I think looking at like your beyond mentors, like your, what's the word I'm looking for? Team, people that you really admire.
Influence.
Yeah, influences. Yeah.
Heroes.
Heroes. Yes, you need to have some heroes.
Demetrius, do you have any good advice for packaging? Going to that interview, landing that job, working at the Boys and Girls Club, getting to what you want, through these kind of hoop jumps that you have to do.
Yeah. My journey has been definitely a bit more unorthodox. Pretty much like all the things I have done have not really been as planned. Especially like working at my old middle school and then working at the job that I'm working at now. I didn't expect to be involved in education the way that I'm involved in. But I also do a lot of things like outside of like my actual job. So I try to stay connected with a lot of organizations that I might not typically be involved with. And I do a lot of volunteer work. Volunteering is definitely another essential piece because that's also another great way to kind of beef up your networking. You can meet a lot of people by just doing volunteer work that you wouldn't even typically expect. And that's my volunteer work has probably been the reason why I've been able to get a lot of the jobs that I have gotten in my past. Just because like they're like, why are you doing that? And it's kind of really just me doing it out of interest, as well as just wanting to be willing to try new things to kind of add more. It kind of, I guess, not take the typical route, but kind of make myself look a bit more unique, if that makes sense.
That's great advice. The volunteering, it's so, to sort of fulfill the things that you want, right, for yourself and for other people, but also as a network building activity. I just want to say, students, professors, please feel free to fill in chat with other questions. We're kind of, I think Julie and I will ask, one or two more, and then we'll open the floor. And if you want to queue up a couple already, that would be great. So feel free to write anything into that chat, and we'll convey it. So.
Perfect. So one question I have for the three of you is kind of, what do you wish you had known when you were on campus, as a student? So if you think back, like, what do you wish you had known that you kind of know now?
I think what I wish I had known when I was on campus was probably that you don't have to know exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life right after college. So really don't panic if you're unsure. Like, you can figure it out later. It'll be fine.
Advice, Jenny.
Mine's super similar. It's like, I wish I had known that all the planning I did was just a plan, and like it wouldn't have actually, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come true. And I just remember personally being like very anxious about all that. And yeah, I just wish I could like go back to myself, my younger self, and just say like, stay connected, have a great time meeting the people that you are with right now. And like making those connections and just really focusing on that. Like that's like a really important aspect that I feel like I could have spent a little bit more time on. And yeah, that aspect of like, it's just a plan. It's just a draft. It's all drafts.
For me, I kind of don't wish I knew anything because I kind of did the things that I thought were best at the time for me. And they kind of all worked out. But similar to what Sarah was saying, I wish I knew how important connections were. And I wish I knew about a lot of things that would definitely help me later down the line, a lot earlier, such as like the cancer gallery. I wish I would have got involved more in that process, but unfortunately, I waited until senior year. But I wish I knew a little bit more about things such as that.
Thanks for the plug, Demetrius. Demetrius should tell you that he just took a work of art that was in our storage space because he sold it. So.
Oh yeah.
So I think, it sounds like a lot of your parting advice is, guys, calm down, try to have fun, live in the moment, enjoy the process, get to know the people around you. Youth is wasted on the young, that kind of stuff. But also, is there anything sort of more, anything else that your parting advice? A lot of these students are seniors, some of them are juniors and younger, but any advice on sort of approaching, as they're approaching the finishing of their college careers and looking out into the workforce? It's not a great time in the world. It's not a great time but is there any advice that you can kind of impart on them as they move forward?
I'd say leverage your Holy Cross network. I'm sure Julie does a really great job, and her team do a really great job of like creating a path to do that. I'm gonna say right now, please feel free to email me. I'll add my email to the chat. I think it's a really important time to just like, speaking of like connecting with people, that includes alums. So that's like just a very concrete thing I feel like seniors especially can be thinking about. Because I think the more conversations you have about next steps, like the better you will know yourself and like what might be a potential match. Yeah.
Jenny, Demetrius. Demetrius, I just want to, I'm going to call you out for a second and say, before everyone jumped on the Zoom, we were chatting and he said, he's applying for MFA programs. So I'm calling you out in that way. And I said, oh, should I mention that? And he said, yeah, telling you, like, I'm happy to talk about it. And I think that's a really good, important point about attitude is, and Val just brought it up as well, which is, keep your lines of communication open. tell everybody everything, keep talking about what you're up to, keep going back to your mentors, never pull yourself into, I'm too ashamed to get in touch, always keep that, that sort of open attitude about your future and talk to everyone you can about it, because you never know when you're going to find that person who connects you to that other person. When you're volunteering and you mention this thing and, you come up getting a job from it. So, just always keeping that sort of open attitude about it is important. So I'm taking Demetrius and giving his advice from the idea of the MFA. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. Oh man, there's some good questions in the chat though.
Yeah, Jenny, I'm going to call on you because there's a couple questions.
Yeah.
So were you involved in sports at Holy Cross? That's one question first.
Yes, I was on the track team.
Okay, perfect. And did that kind of influence your kind of career trajectory at all? Like, how did that play into what you're doing now, do you think?
I guess maybe a little. Like I worked at a running store for a little bit after college and stuff, but I also, working as part of a team is part of what I do now. So I guess, that's part of it as well.
Perfect.
So wait, well, I have to interject here because Jenny, what I remember is a very beautiful piece you made in 3D Fundamentals that was a model of your knee, of the surgery maybe that you had on your knee or something. Does this ring a bell at all with you? It was a
Maybe.
crazy piece because I couldn't tell what it was at first, but I often thought, that you went into prosthetics and here you were in 3D Fundamentals building this sort of model of a knee out of wood. So it was really curious to me.
Oh yeah. I think I might remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so long ago. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah, no,
it. So that's good.
I do apply like a lot of the stuff I learned. Like a lot of the stuff I do is like very sculptural these days.
Yeah.
Like I brought home some samples from work, but like, we carve out legs
Oh
out
my
of foam and
gosh.
stuff like that. So, it's part of the job.
It's amazing.
And Jenny, Susan was asking, talk a little bit about kind of what you feel is the most rewarding part of making prosthetics.
I guess it's being able to make a profound impact on somebody else's life. Like these are really important to some people, like they help them walk. Some people that it really like influences how they feel about their appearance. And like that, they like a good looking prosthetic looks different for everybody. Like some people like out like really bright colors, other people want it to look very much like their other legs. So I love being able to be part of a process that that helps people walk or participate in activities or feel more comfortable with how they look. So that's cool. Oh, and I am still making graphic novel style drawings. It's kind of like it's kind of like a journal almost. I just do it to keep track of what happens in my everyday life. So I kind of just draw comics about what's going on.
That's great. Thank you. Christy, do you want to pose your question? I feel like we can hear from other people. It's a small group. Unmute.
Okay, yeah. So the one I was thinking about, Val, when you were talking about being a first-gen student and your parents didn't want you to major in visual arts, and I've heard that story from a lot of students over the years, and I had a lot of students. We've all had students that have struggled with that decision, who didn't feel supported by their families to actually major. Like we had a student one year that her parents didn't know she was a studio art major until they came to the opening. And it was like this really emotional experience for everybody because they didn't even know she was a studio art major. So and this is somebody who's gone on to get an MFA and who's gone on to be successful. And so I just, I think that would be really valuable for students who, who feel insecure about that decision or feel unsure about the decision or also feel unsupported in that decision. Like, what would you, what would you say to those students to make them feel more more strong and have more conviction in that decision that they feel passionate about.
Sure. Definitely feel that one very, very deeply. So two things, just do it and they'll find out eventually it's okay. Secondly, invite them to be part of the story. And I think most parents will glow and be really proud of you when they see what you're actually doing. Because I feel like parents might have an idea of what the arts are and what that means for your future, but no, perhaps they don't have, or at least for my parents, didn't have like a lot of ideas of like what that could mean in a lot of different contexts. I remember like a particularly proud moment of mine. Like this has been like a long journey with my parents. Like especially when I went back for my post-bac certificate program just to work on art, they were just like, what are you doing? And they were, I was being really intentional about showing them my art and talking to them about what I was exploring and what I was excited about. And I remember taking them to the Whitney, and I was doing a lot of fiber arts shows or fiber art works, and there happened to be a lot of quilts and fiber art work, and they're like, Sada, you're doing that, but you're doing it much better. And it was just such a cute like parent moment, but it was like, yes, you're like coming around to this idea that I am an artist and that this is always going to be part of me and who I am. And so it's like, in a way, you almost have to spend more time and just like share the excitement and the passion that drives you to be in that field and that making whatever you're making. And I feel like it's only infectious, right? And it does take time and patience, and it's not going to happen overnight. I think it's just also good to share with your parents that like there's like actually a lot of really cool Holy Cross alums that do a bunch of stuff in the arts, even more than what is on this panel. And I think Holy Cross is also doing a better and better job every day of showcasing our alums in the arts. So I think those Holy Cross magazines are going to help you. Inviting like your parents to be part of your creative process is really important, and just kind of stick to your gut a little bit. And I think that'll help with all those concerns that they have for you.
It's great advice. Another question for anyone on the panel. Are you still in touch with art majors from your class year or other art peers? And kind of any thoughts on like maintaining those connections?
I am, especially, I mean, my class is relative. We graduated relative, the fine art exhibition. So I still keep in contact with them, and we still like make jokes about like our name, because our name was like kind of like an inside joke. But yeah, not too many of them are still kind of, creating on a scale that they were doing in undergrad, but they are still doing like, small work. They're still trying to stay involved in the art scene. So it could be a bit discouraging at times when you kind of like feel like you're the only one in the trenches that's still going. But if you connect, you'll see that they're, still working, but just life has kind of, really taken the reins. But art is still like a passion for most of them in that regard.
Great.
Fine art, our gift to you. Remember?
Oh my gosh! Shout out to Joe. Joe put that together. Like, he's the mastermind.
Fine art, our gift to you.
I wanted to ask that question just because I think that sometimes when we think about networking, we think of it vertically, right? And for me, it's really more about art peers, right? So it's like 2 or 3 people from Holy Cross. It's not like I'm talking to them all the time, but some of those people, and then certainly in graduate school, it's those peers that I maybe get a show through the peers, sort of more than this like vertical kind of like networking as we might think about it. On the other hand, I also sort of encourage you just to randomly email people that are sort of your art crushes. And if they're super busy, like, I mean, I don't mean like Anne Hamilton, like, I don't mean like super, super famous, but if they're on this sort of level, like they're just, working at another college or something, they might email you back. And I do that also with authors that I like or books that I've read. So yeah, and so actually Peggy Orenstein writes these books about like princess culture and raising girls and gender, and I find her really interesting. And I sent her an email, and she was like, "Let's get a coffee." And I was like, "Oh, I don't live in New York. I'm sorry," but yeah. So it's really amazing how people will respond to you, but particularly within the Holy Cross network, if you can sort of play that card. but even just outside of that, and if you just think about your peers as a sort of lateral network instead of the up and down.
Michelle, you have to talk about your letters to veto project. Speaking of sending like letters to your heroes and a Holy Cross alum.
Oh, yeah, actually I did. And it hadn't even occurred to me that I'd like, yeah, this is something I've been doing for quite a while, like just sending people, with him, it was actual handwritten physical letters. And often it's more like an email to someone that I admire, someone whose research I admire. But I had done a project once where I wrote letters to Vito's studio and I just sent them off. And he was a Holy Cross alum and a performance artist and a kind of super well-known eventually architect, but he never replied to my letters, but I would just send them off and yeah, right, just see what happened.
So we know we're just about at time. I'm going to throw one last question out. I think it's a really good one. Melissa asked, have you found ways that your day jobs have enhanced or changed your art making? So we'll end with that.
I'll just chime in. I often find, there's this sort of sense that creative work is separate from these other things. And I sometimes find that, I write, so I'm not doing what you're doing, I'm an art historian, but I find that sometimes it can be from something different that I'm doing that prompts me to think differently about a project that I'm working on. And so I was just curious if any of you had an experience where something that you think you're just doing to pay the bills actually really influences your art in a way that maybe you didn't expect. Maybe not.
I mean, for me, it allows me to stay kind of like not relevant, but like stay up to date, like what's happening. Like a lot earlier and like in my days of creating, I relied a little bit more on the historical issues and things like that happened in the past. But as I work with teens and work with kids, they definitely keep me up to date a lot more than I thought I was already up to date. But really just allows me to kind of keep my eye keen to like what's going on and what's said. And I don't know, it definitely allows my work to stay fresh, I guess, because I'm talking about things that's happening right before our eyes, and kind of tying that into like historical things and such things such and such. It's like that. So kind of allows my work to stay fresh.
Yeah. And do you find sometimes trying to articulate something to your students when you're working with them causes you to think about, I find that teaching that sometimes it causes me to think about something differently as I'm forced to articulate something I'm kind of working through.
Yeah, it's kind of like the critiques. They really just challenge your ideas, kind of like pushing it to the brink to like really make you reevaluate what you thought, in a sense. So definitely that push and pull of like beliefs and ideas definitely gets attacked a lot in a good way.
Especially with teenagers.
Oh, of course.
And with love. Yeah. I mean, I only work with middle school students at Nativity, but they were preteens, so even better, even more fun. No. But in terms of like my day job and like how it influences or impacts my art making, I feel like I've mentioned it kind of briefly earlier, but like I feel lucky that I'm like kind of in the art community all day. And even though the work I'm doing might be more art or community organizing, so like specifically I like look over orientation and like student organizations, but like I have like one of the student organizations I advise is like the skate sculpture club, and they like skate on sculptures that they build and give me a heart attack every week. But they're like they've also just challenged my way of thinking about like movement and form and like how you can interact with an art object. And there's also like the mushroom club, and they like grow mushrooms in a really cool and different way. So like I feel like being around art students all the time. Yeah, mushroom club. They're definitely always challenging convention and different ideas, and so they're definitely exposing me to different perspectives, which is really great. I'm also just around a lot of other artists, whether they're the studio managers, and they can teach me out different techniques, or I get the benefit of like accessing the different studios at the school, which is exciting and been interesting for me. So definitely, like, I feel lucky that it does enhance my work. Like, I don't have to own a screen, an exposure unit for screen printing, because I can just use the school's one. So like benefit of working at a school. And yeah, there's a lot of different aspects of that. And in terms of working with students, they definitely are always making me think about new and exciting things. And I get to go to the different art talks that are at the school consistently. So yeah, I feel lucky in that way that my day job connects pretty directly most of the time.
I guess in terms of my my day job, I guess I picked up a lot of new technical skills in school for my job, and I guess on my job. So it kind of gives me new ways to construct things when I'm at home making art. And I guess another nice thing is a lot of my coworkers are quite creative. So we share art supplies sometimes. We'll like, my supervisor gave me some really neat inks to work with one time. So we kind of swap things and exchange prints or whatever when whenever we make something. So it's kind of been a little like a nice community as well.
That's great. Thank you all.
Well, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Val, Jenny, and Demetrius for being here and sharing your time and your expertise. Yeah, I just think you all had such great stories and advice, and I hope the students on the call, I'm sure, gleaned a lot of great information from it. And I think, you know, as I think a theme, as we heard from a lot of you, is just, and so I give the students here who are here credit, like it's just showing up, right? And just kind of continue to build that network. So I think yay for the students that are here on the Zoom. I know you're on Zoom a lot during the day. So I think just taking the time to be here says a lot too. So thank you again, Val, Jenny, and Demetrius. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
And everyone can put on an artist hat, even if you have a different day job. You can all, if you update your Zoom,
What in the world?
Oh, my
you can get some filters like the beret.
Your,
Wait a
your,
minute.
Please.
your background is amazing, Michelle. Your giant cat.
I know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, the dog. It's your
For a
dog.
minute, I was like,
Okay.
is that a real cat in the back? I was trying to figure that out, but yeah.
That's great.
Like the whole issue there is amazing.
Wait, Jenny,
You
I
just
want
gotta
to see
update.
that leg again. That
Yeah,
Oh
was-
yeah, sure. I
I
did
know.
bring a few samples because I wasn't sure if someone would be curious. So
oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
We're
Yeah.
curious.
and
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa,
those
whoa,
are-
what was that?
Bring that back.
so this is an
Okay.
arm. It's not done yet. It's a demo I was working on during the pandemic, and so I took this fabric from home and I sewed it into the right shape, and then I laminated it with resin. And yeah, and I can show you the legs I have as well. So this is the
oh my gosh.
this is a big transfemoral prosthesis. So we actually carve these foam covers, like we have these machines with sanders on them, and we carve them like this. And then I have this little transtibial here. So this is a carbon fiber one, and yeah, same thing. We laminate the socket over a cast with resin. So yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah.
Do we have any other things to share? Demetrius, what's in that sketchbook? Val, what's behind the screen?
I'm gonna have to do a sketchbook too. I probably have to lend it over to Kent Gallery because I have too many.
Yeah,
At some
I'm
point.
like a bit of a hoarder too. That's part of my problem. Like,
Oh my
like, and I really should get like I want a rolling wall eventually, you know, so I can tack stuff on it. But it's just like a big, you know, I thought about just pulling it out for the talk, but you can kind of see it's just like all my stuff, and
yeah.
it goes back there, and there's like my easels over there, but it's a little messy and stressful to think about and work next to all day on Zoom. So yeah.
Same. I'm just, like surrounded by like so many, like my like I'm like in my basement studio. And this is like so many paintings, and like I have like so many paintings over there. I'm working on some
Ooh.
big things out here, people.
Right.
Demetrius, are you able to be at the Boys and Girls Club? Sorry, we're just chatting now. Are you there for like able
Yeah,
to?
they kind of got me hybrid.
Yeah.
So I'm there like pretty much 4 days a week, but we had to limit the space and the amount of kids that could actually come into like certain spaces. So we can only have like 10 kids at a time. And then I'm there from like Monday